My name is Shelley Neal. I'm the Executive Director of the Multicultural Arts Center. That's the building that you're in right now. For people who have not had a moment to look up at the ceiling medallion. It's spectacular. The building was designed by Charles Bulfinch in the 1820s. He passed before he had an opportunity to see the construction that started. The building is listed on the Registry of Historic Buildings. It's a wonderful, wonderful space that we make available for community events and projects, dance performances, music concerts, theatrical performance, private functions, nonprofit events, corporate events, because the space is multi-purpose. We hope that if you have not been here before, raise your hands that you've never been here before. Okay, a few. We hope that you'll come back. Sitting on your seats underneath you, we've placed some information about upcoming performances that we're going to be doing. One in November, one in December, and one in January. And we hope that you will join us. We have other events that are planned but not quite finalized yet. The good news is if you go onto our website, you can join our mailing list, which has over 6,000 people on it right now. And we send out monthly newsletters. And if you join our mailing list, it's an opt-in list. We don't sell your list to anybody else. We don't share it. And we'll let you know once a month, sometimes more, what events are coming up. We're very excited to be hosting this event. I would like to recognize Jason Weeks, who's the Executive Director of Cambridge Arts and is in the audience. I would also like to tell people that this year, as of July 1st, we took in and worked with and loved them our very first theatrical group, which is Bridge Repertory Theater. They're a wonderful organization. Again, it's our first resident theater company, and they're involved in a multiplicity of productions that you'll be reading about on our website. So we're going to welcome up Jose Mateo from Jose Mateo Ballet Theater. And thank you all. Give yourself a round of applause for coming out in the rain and caring about the arts and interested in what the candidates have to say. So thank you for being here with us tonight. Jose?
Reading my remarks. Good evening. My name is Jose Mateo, and I'm the founder and director of Ballet Theater of Boston, a 32-year-old organization comprised of a school and performance company, and the producer of Dance for World Community, an initiative that is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Dance for World Community works in partnership with city government, local businesses, other arts organizations, and social advocacy nonprofits. All of these, I believe, are very well represented here tonight, to bring together the entire dance community. And by dance, I mean dance in its broadest sense. So that means all of you are included. To expand the role of dance, and by extension, the role of the arts in local community, here and beyond. A good part of that role is about advocacy. Advocacy around social and environmental issues that raises awareness and can ultimately create the kind of change that unifies and strengthens local communities. You can therefore understand why I was so excited to have been invited some 5 years ago or so to join the board of Mass Creative, the statewide advocacy group for the arts and cultural community that has brought us all together here tonight. I joined Mass Creative as it was launching its campaign to raise awareness about and catalyze new action around the mayoral race in Boston that got Marty Walsh elected. I'm still amazed by how he went from a candidate who barely mentioned the arts in the earlier part of his campaign to someone who one radio commentator referred to as the arts mayor. I believe Mass Creative had something to do with that. So as someone who was a proud Cambridge resident for 35 years and continues to work in this our fair city. I am particularly excited that Mass Creative is getting involved here to advance the arts. Mass Creative is honored and thrilled to be working with the leaders of Cambridge's artistic, cultural, and creative community to put on this event tonight. As we all know, now more than ever, our democracy is fragile and requires constant attention from the entire citizenry that benefits from it. Elections are the time when candidates and voters can come together to examine the strengths of our city and the challenges that we face, explore the opportunities we have in front of us, and create the vision for a better city and commonwealth. This election season, we want to make sure that arts and culture are a part of the dialogues and debates that are happening in city council and mayoral races in cities across Massachusetts. Through its Create the Vote 2017 initiative, Mass Creative is working with arts leaders in 15 cities to get them to ask candidates how arts and culture fit in their vision of their city's futures. We are also working to help educate and encourage voters to look at the candidates' positions with regards to the arts before they vote. Here in Cambridge, a number of the candidates have already filled out an arts questionnaire, and their answers are posted in our website, masscreative.org. Tonight, we are excited to provide the candidates with the opportunity to share with you their vision and their ideas for support of the arts and the culture community. So I guess we should get that show on the road, but I want to thank you all for your attendance tonight. Thank you.
Evening. How's everybody doing today? All right, my name is Pierre. I'm a lifelong Cambridge resident, artist, and arts advocate. I'm currently with the Cambridge Community Arts Center as their public arts coordinator. My role here tonight, I was a part of the group of people, part of the group that put this forum together with Mass Creative. I have a couple of things on paper, but I feel like after talking to some of the candidates, and to some of the candidates as well as some of the attendees, I feel like, thank you. I feel like it might be better if I just, thank you, if I just speak from my experiences as a fan of the arts in Cambridge. So, why art? Why is it important? Part of, again, my responsibility for the event was to do outreach to the candidates. I had a few candidates tell me, frankly, that they felt like their constituents were more concerned with other topics such as housing, education, and so on. I understood what they were coming from, but again, as a fan of the arts, I have to say that I would want them to take a harder look at arts as far as its contribution to our society and our city. I feel like Cambridge, growing up in Cambridge, I had the privilege, again, of just being around in a city that embraced the arts, that embraced the idea of creativity. I remember real briefly a story from when I was younger. I was on a trip with my parents through Porter Square, through North Cambridge and Porter Square, and it was around the time when the station had just finished its renovation. Getting off the train, and after getting over the fact that the escalator was probably one of the longest escalator rides that I've ever been on, seeing the artwork. At the time I didn't realize it was artwork, but just seeing the gloves cast in, or the cast iron gloves, not knowing what it is, but just having it spark all the questions that I had, holding my mother's hand, going up the escalator and seeing it, going outside and seeing the windmill, which to me looked like three giant shovels, three red shovels just rotating in the wind, and then walking along Mass Ave and seeing the stories of, I think it was something to do with Greek mythology. I think it was a griffin with a little bit of literature. I remember pestering my sister to try to get her to read it for me and explain to me what it was. She didn't bother. She had other things to do. But all that to say that I feel like art is something that I feel like we should really, really take a look at as far as what it does when we see it and when it's in our lives. You know, for the last 10 years, I've been an arts advocate. I come from an area in Cambridge, I feel like it's underrepresented. Visual arts specifically, it's underrepresented. I've seen other areas as far as sports or, I'll stick with sports. I've worked with Cambridge youth programs, and I feel like sports is something that gets a lot of attention. But when you have, you know, a good group of students who are not into sports, you know what I mean? Those students will turn to teenagers who turn to adults, and those people will be a part of your city, part of your culture. You know, they can contribute, but they need our support. So in general, our arts needs our support. So thank you all for coming. Thank you, the candidates, for taking the time out and making the decision to come and support the arts. And good luck.
Hi, my name's Maggie Harris. I'm often referred to as the glove lady in Porter Square. I've lived in Cambridge for 47 years and teach at the museum school. This is really high, yeah. So as an educator, I'm aware how difficult it is for younger artists to make a living. They often work several jobs or piece together an income to continue their studio practice. I am one of the last generation of people who could have afforded to live and work in Cambridge. We bought in 1970. And many artists that are here have studios elsewhere. Jerry Bergstein is in the audience here. And there's no industrial spaces left in Cambridge. These are being turned into condos and high-tech office spaces. And I want the city to help sponsor artist housing, studios, and find appropriate rehearsal spaces for the performing arts. Lesley University has absorbed the Art Institute of Boston, and it's so fabulous to be in Porter Square now and see young people with blue hair and black nails. And, you know, we want to keep those guys here because we need to do that for our young artists. What about the galleries? Where are the galleries here? Where did they go? So, you know, if you can't see your artists in the town, do they exist here? Anyway, I think the city has relied on universities to support the arts. Harvard, MIT, and now Lesley. We have galleries and museums, which they fund. Yes, we live in a fantastic place where lecturers and notables come here because of Harvard and MIT. So, the city is now focused on Kendall Square as the innovation district. So, yeah, this is exciting, but we need to make sure that we include artists and art venues in this equation. So, in the 70s, I was here. Cambridge Arts Council applied for a transportation grant from the federal government as a demonstration project to place art in the subways. The premise being that the subways would be cleaner and friendlier places to be. It was an amazing success that was modeled and copied all over the country. So, and Cambridge won many awards for their initiative. Your city trucks, they have the works on it. That was a Cambridge Arts Council project. And every time I see it, it makes value of our city workers. I think it's terrific. So it's great we have a 1% for Art program. We're one of many in the, well, we're the only one in the state, I think, aren't we? And Somerville is going to have one very soon. There are hundreds of percent of art programs in the country, but for many years our percent for art program was capped at 100,000. Let's raise that cap. We can build significant projects for future generations. You know, it's difficult to build something for 100,000 in our harsh weather and with all the community meetings and the high price of hotels and living here. I love the things that are happening in Cambridge, the Rebels, the River Sing, the sculpture race, the Honk Festival now has bled into Cambridge, Head of the Charles Regatta, Catalyst Conversations. These are all generated outside of the city's monies, but bring a tremendous spirit to our city and generates significant revenue. The Arts Council has had an inadequate budget for a city that is so rich in funds. What they do is fabulous, but should be supported much more generously. So, I'm going to vote for the people who support the arts. So you prospective city councillors, we want to see what you can do for us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Max. Good evening. My name is Denise Jolson. I'm the Executive Director for the Harvard Square Business Association, and I'm honored to be your moderator this evening. So thank you all for being here for the Cambridge Create the Vote Forum on Arts, Culture, and Creativity. I see firsthand on a daily basis the impact that art, culture, and creativity has on Harvard Square. From the Jose Mateo Ballet Theater to Passim, the Brattle Theater, the New School of Music, Longy, the Sinclair, the Regatta Bar, the Cambridge Art Association, the Grolier Poetry Bookstore, the Comedy Studio, and Cambridge Artists Cooperative, just to name a few. And while we celebrate these organizations and so many more from across the city that leave us entertained, inspired, provoked, and delighted, let us not forget the positive economic impact that cultural organizations and their audiences have on our community. The Americans for the Arts conducted a study led by economists from the Georgia Institute of Technology. Their survey analyzed data from the City of Cambridge fiscal year 2015 and concluded art and cultural organizations and their audiences as an industry expended over $174 million. They supported over 5,000 full-time equivalent jobs. Household income paid to Cambridge residents was over $79 million. Revenue generated to our local community was over $5 million, and to our local government, over $4 million. Event-related spending by art and cultural audiences totaled over $55 million, and that excludes the cost of admission. Nonprofit and cultural attendees spend on average $34 per event, excluding the cost of admission, on things like meals, refreshments, souvenirs, gifts, transportation, and lodging. It's important to note that Cambridge was the first community in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to make a contribution to support the local cultural council program. In fact, in fiscal year 18, the Massachusetts contribution was $21,600 and Cambridge's contribution was $70,000 for a total of over $91,000. My friends, the good news is that art, culture, and creativity are alive and well in Cambridge. We're going to hear from our leaders and future leaders on making the city, on how they plan on making the city more vibrant, more robust, more relevant, reaching more members of our community to allow for more entertainment, more inspiration, more provocation, and certainly more delight. We give our thanks tonight to Shelley Neal from the Multicultural Arts Center for providing us this beautiful venue. We thank and know that you will support our co-sponsors that are listed in the program. We thank Susan Fleischman and CCTV for broadcasting this event live, and we thank all of our candidates for participating tonight, keeping our values clear and our democracy strong. Now let's get started. So this is how it will work. We're going to call on our candidates in the order in which they arrived this evening. Each candidate will be invited to the podium and will be given a 3 minutes to present, and then there will be a warning. After each presentation, the candidate will be asked a follow-up question by either Matt Wilson from Mass Creative or Erin Becca. Erin is the Executive Director for the Cambridge Arts Association. Candidates will be given 90 seconds to respond to the follow-up question, and then we'll move on to the next candidate. And once all candidates have spoken, if time allows, we'll accept questions from the audience. So with that, first person to arrive this evening was Adrian Musgrave. Adrian?
Hi, can you hear me? Hello? Okay, sorry. A little higher. My name is Adrian Musgrave, and Hi, my name is Adrian Musgrave, and I was the first candidate here because I care about the arts, and I hope that translates into your first vote, which is your #1 vote. I actually went to an arts middle school, but my arts talent ended at age 14. So now I like to say that I am experienced, dedicated, and ready to serve Cambridge here on your city council because I have done my homework and I've come prepared. I am in awe of artists because they do something that I cannot. It is express feelings and ideas and concepts in ways that are unimaginable to many of us and spark delight and interest and new awareness. When I talk to artists, or arts supporting organizations, much of what you've said is we can't afford to live here. So here we are again talking about affordable housing and how we're going to have more of a diverse community here in Cambridge. There has been a lot of forums talking about that, so I will just briefly state my perspective, but I believe we need to start talking more about what's called a citywide affordable housing overlay. This would allow us to build all throughout the city, and it would be able to allow us to build just a little denser and just a little higher so that more people can live in our city. Because right now, our artists who are performing at the Art or here at the Multicultural Arts Center, they can't afford to live close by. So this would allow us to build just a little denser and just a little higher to be able to have more people live here in Cambridge. We also can open up an innovative program that could offer a property tax reduction to property owners who would want to lease out a room or extra space in their house for perhaps single artists to live in there. We have an aging population, and maybe we can fulfill both needs at the same time. You can find more of my housing proposals on my website, but I'd also like to talk about other areas in the city that we should continue to focus on. You may be surprised or delighted to know that here in the greater Boston area, we receive, or spending for the arts is second only to New York City. However, this is private money, and 40% of it goes to our 3 major arts institutions, all in Boston. So what we need to make sure to use our government funding for are local community organizations that don't get the representation that they should. And that's one reason why I'm really excited about all the work that the Community Arts Center has done in the port, in the Home Port project. And I'd like to see that expanded. I'd like to increase the funding for that as well. I'd like to make sure that all kids here in Cambridge have access to after-school programs. Currently, they don't. And a big part of that is providing arts-directed after-school programs. I came from Ringe Avenue School where the band was happening, and so having more kids have access to this is something that's really important for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Having gone to a school focused on arts, What was it about arts education, and what do you believe about it is important for young kids, and how that affects the overall education experience?
It's absolutely critical, and I feel so lucky to have gone to that school, because at the time it pulled students from all across our district, from all range of socioeconomic backgrounds, and it contributed to a lively, vibrant community at the school where teachers were able to do lots of creative projects. And just as we heard earlier, not every kid is a bookworm, not every kid plays sports. There's so much untapped potential in this community, and making sure that we bring arts programs, whether it's a loaned instrument program, to all of our kids is something that's so critical for future success.
Thank you. So a little bit of homework. For the candidates, the timers are going to be right here against the wall, Erin and Brandy. So they'll be holding up the signs. So just every once in a while, just take a look over there and they'll keep you on track. The other thing I wanted to mention, if anybody's tweeting this evening, it's hashtag Arts Matter and hashtag Create the Vote. Also, tomorrow is Arts Matter Day in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and that would be hashtag Arts Matter Day. So there you have it. Our next candidate, please join me in welcoming Quintin Zondervan.
Thank you. Cambridge is the innovation capital of the world, perhaps. And innovation requires creativity. Everything is connected, and art is part of everything that we do. I'm the president of Green Cambridge, which focuses on sustainability in the city of Cambridge. I'm proud to say that we recently partnered with Julie Croston and the Wildlife Puppetry Project to bring art into our programming and into our education of especially young children, to help connect them back to the natural world. Art has always been a special part of my life. I've been able to learn how to draw, how to make music, how to play music, and my children have received an education here in Cambridge and have enjoyed the arts as part of that. My daughter is the co-director of one of the a cappella groups at the high school. I was inspired for this particular forum to actually show you, rather than tell you, how everything is connected, by my friend Olivia, our future arts counselor. And so I wrote a very brief skit that I would like to perform for you with my friend Andrew, who is standing in for Counselor Carlone. So I'm an amateur playwright, and I'm even worse as an actor, so I hope you'll indulge me, and I hope you'll enjoy our brief little skit, which is called The King, the Magistrate, and the Pastries, and it is a play about housing in Cambridge. So, Andrew, if you want to come up here and join me so we can use the microphone. All right, so I'm going to play the magistrate, and Andrew will be the king. So here we go. Your Majesty, the people are starving and they cannot afford the pastries.
Let them eat cake. I declare that for every 10 pastries, 1 cake shall be produced for the people.
Thank you, Your Majesty. The people will be very grateful. Your Majesty, the people are still hungry and there are not enough cakes.
Well, let it be that for every 10 pastries, 2 cakes shall be produced.
Thank you, Your Majesty. The people will be most grateful. Your Majesty, the people are still hungry.
Well, have we not been generous with them?
Yes, Your Majesty, but given that there are 10 poor for each nobleman, wouldn't it make more sense to have 10 cakes for each pastry produced?
Off with his head.
Thank you.
So
So when we were talking before the beginning of the forum, you mentioned that economic or environmental policy is the driving force behind your campaign. How do you think you can combine arts into environmental policy to the betterment of both in Cambridge?
Thanks. So as I had mentioned, in Green Cambridge, we recently partnered this new program to bring that into our activities. I organized the second Climate Congress last fall, and we took great care to make sure that we had a speaker who presented on the role of the arts in our response to climate change. And it was very well received, and I think very important that we keep that in mind as we respond to this enormous challenge. I'm a scientist, an engineer. I'm very focused on the numbers and the data, but it's really important that we include the arts in order to communicate emotionally what we're dealing with and how we can respond so that we can connect with a lot more people around these different issues.
Thank you, kind sir. I'm going to ask Brandy and Erin to maybe come and sit here in the front so that folks can see you. How's that? Yeah, maybe over here so people can see you. And I would like to invite Councillor Jan Devereaux to the podium.
Thank you all for being here, and I'd also like to recognize former Mayor Henrietta Davis. Glad to see a familiar face. I'm going to need an adjustment. Should have done this in order of height or something, right? So in preparing for this tonight, I went to an unusual place. I went to the Envision Cambridge statement of what the vision is for the city, because I think what this group is trying to do is to envision Cambridge as more of a deliberately art city. And the vision statement, which I was actually involved in helping to write as part of a citizen group that assembled, Cambridge is a forward-thinking, welcoming, and diverse city. We enjoy a high quality of life and thrive in a sustainable, inclusive, and connected community. And to me, that isn't about buildings. That's about who we are as a community, and to me, the arts are what connect us. They provide the quality of life. They're the heart, the soul, the glue that brings us together. And yet, in the Envision Cambridge process, which has been going on for about a year now, there is no arts working group. There is a group dedicated to housing, which is very important. There's a group dedicated to mobility, to the economy, to the environment, equally important, but there's no arts working group. So I actually looked at Monday's City Council agenda before I came, and lo and behold, our mayor, who I don't think is here yet, has put on the agenda a policy order to create a comprehensive arts working group to develop this vision. So my hat's off to her. That's great. I am enthusiastic about that. I hope that goes. So there's also a response from the manager about creating a series of 4 community dialogues that Shelley and her group will be doing, and I look forward to those next year. So, I also went back. I like to do my homework too. I have 1 minute left. I went back to the community needs assessment, another process of looking at what our community needs, and again, the arts fell to the bottom. It got triaged, and in part, it was because we're doing a lot of great things. We have Jason Weeks here in the audience. We have fabulous programs, and relatively speaking, compared to other cities in Cambridge, we're doing well, but we're losing artists, and we're losing arts organizations because of the high cost of living, and the high cost of land, and the high cost of housing. I'm married to a retired singer-songwriter who came here in the late 60s with that wave of artists who are now in their late 60s and 70s and a little older. That wouldn't be possible today. So I am an artist by temperament. I studied English literature. I write. I communicate. This is what I am. The political thing is great, but if I could really do what I wanted to do, I would be a writer. And so I count artists, many of you in this room, as my friends. So I really want to help support you guys. And thanks for having this. And also, shout out to Olivia for putting the arts on every forum's agenda just by talking about it. Sorry.
What do you foresee them doing, and what would you expect the Arts Working Group to actually come out with and kind of help with the broader how city government would engage more in the arts?
Well, I think we'll have to see what the mayor has in mind, but she's trying to bring together people from all disciplines, all neighborhoods. Knowing the mayor, it will be a very diverse and inclusive group. And I think we don't, as somebody mentioned to me starting here tonight, we don't often bring arts organizations into the same room. You know, like everyone else, we get siloed. And so we don't necessarily have the theater directors talking to the youth arts leaders, all of those people, getting them in the room. And I mean, I know some of them participated in the community needs assessment, but I don't think that their needs were truly recognized as being a need in the community that rose to the same level as hunger and homelessness and mental health. But the arts are really good for mental health. That, you know, don't you feel better? Those of you who are makers in this room, don't you feel much better after you've created something, even if that isn't your vocation, it's just your avocation? So we need the arts. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. And our next candidate is Greg Morey. Greg?
My name is Greg Morey, and I'm a carpenter. And carpenters have built some of the most beautiful buildings in the city of Cambridge. In the early days of Harvard University, carpenters built this building. And this is a beautiful building. So I would tell you that the arts are very important to so many people in Cambridge that I do support the arts. Online, I've answered the survey that they've asked me, and I've answered them all yes, each one of them. We need more spaces for the arts. People need to do their job, and they need spaces to work in. So I support that issue. I also come from a long history of family in Cambridge. I'm a 100-year Cambridge resident. I'm 60 years. My family's been here 100 years. And my uncle was the director of the Cambridge Public Library, and he also was on the Arts and Science Council for years and years and years, and also on the commission. So we have open studios. With Joe Saki, my uncle here, started CCTV. He started CCTV. And before that, he ran the Cambridge Public Library for 28 years, and he wrote the Bill of Rights with Franklin Roosevelt. The Bill of Rights is right there. I know we're talking about the arts. If you would, my uncle, he's been on the board for years. 20 years he's been on that board. On your board. Your board, he's been on your board. So I wanted to mention that. And I also wanted to mention that diversity is key. We have 190 different nationalities in the city of Cambridge throughout the world. We need to keep them here. They're smart. And we need to protect them as well. We have we support diversity and bipartisanship. As I'm walking around the building, I see Lincoln in the hallway. I never seen a Lincoln statue in the hallway, so I'm going to mention them. And so diversity is key. Working in a bipartisanship way, Democrats and Republicans working together on issues of the arts. I mean, there's two stores on Mass Ave. Stereo Jack and Montrose Spa. Montrose Spa was owned by my uncle, had a food store. But the Jack Stereo, he was owned by a Republican. And they all loved me equally. You know, we're going to get back to the arts now. We're going to stay on the Arts Council. Because on the Bill of Rights, the Arts Council, mental health, we need money for opioid addiction as well. Opioid addiction, we need money, resources for the Cambridge Police Department and the Fire Department. And so my name is gregmorey.com. You can check out my answers to the Arts Council right here. Any questions you want to ask me?
To hear your long family history in Cambridge. I'm the director of the Cambridge Arts Association, which is different than the Arts Council. And I just want to ask you, for those who have not had a chance to read over the survey, how do you personally engage with the arts in Cambridge?
Well, I'm going to, you know, a city council is supposed to be supporting good values. And if that's a good value and it helps citizens, then I'm going to support that.
But how do you directly engage? Do you go to
Well,
cultural
I would bring
events?
everybody into City Hall and have a conversation about it. We're having a conversation right now. And so I would support your issue. If your issue is for more open space, if your issue is about affordable space for Art Council, I'm going to vote on it. And I'd like to hand, as we're talking about the arts, I did the interview with the John F. Kennedy boat known as the Honey Pits. That's a piece of art. And that boat was completely retrofitted. And I did the interview and it was used in Pearl Harbor. So I'd like to hand this over to Matt Wilson. Matt, you can show the Art Council a little bit about me. And I just want to hand just a little of my Uncle Joe Saki, Director of the Cambridge Public Library, Arts Council, Science, Mental Health. And its diversity is key, and working in a bipartisanship way is key. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg. I'd like to call Brian Sutton to the podium.
Oh, must be the same height, Greg. All right. My name is Brian Sutton. So I grew up in upstate New York, and I moved around a lot, a bunch of different towns and cities, but then I arrived home here in Cambridge. So I'm an engineer right now, and the first thing they taught us in engineering class was how arts affected rocket propulsion. It sounded funnier when I froze, I guess. That's not true. But, arts, imagination, creativity, they are extremely important to me, and I'm going to explain to you why that is. So I'm an activist. I work with a couple groups trying to remove the influence of money in politics and increase civic engagement. As an example, tomorrow I'll be speaking at UU Mass Action on behalf of a group called Represent.us, who's trying to reduce the influence of money in politics through anti-corruption resolutions, which they've done in 25 towns. And then I also advocate for publicly funded elections at every one of these forums. But what does all that have to do with arts? So I think that right now, we're at kind of a crossroads. And in one direction, we're going to have a further consolidation of wealth. We're going to have more profit-driven legislation, and we're going to have catastrophic climate change, and we're going to have a nuclear war, or both. But there's another direction where we get our community and the public interest, and we reclaim our voice in the decision-making process. So if you look through history, and I love looking at history, but every revolution corresponded with an equally significant arts movement. You can't talk about the Renaissance and only mention science. That's crazy. You can't talk about the civil rights movement without mentioning the influence of jazz music to it. And you can't underestimate the strength of an artistic expression that can drive an idea and a message home. So I know that the Arts Council has this year a budget of $1.1 million. I know that they've got 5 people on the board. I know, are part of the department. I know that they do a great job licensing street performers in Harvard Square, and that they do a great job putting together the Riverfest and Summer in the City. I couldn't tell you honestly what part of that really needs help, and Google didn't know. But I like life as a counselor, you run into things that you don't know all the time, and it just means that I have an opportunity to work with the Arts Council and work with all the organizations here, continually engage with them, to work with their advice on what needs to happen with the arts. So I don't want you to underestimate how important I believe that the arts and science and culture come together. I'm getting cut off, so go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please, Matt, go and ask me a question.
Yeah.
Thanks for your comments. I like a little history lesson too. That's great. When we talk about money, I understand concern about money in politics, but a lot of the groups and individual artists kind of rub nickels together to make it happen. Here in Cambridge, there's a number of large educational institutions and corporations that are moving into town. What what role do you think they have in helping to support, or what responsibility do they have at supporting the broader arts and cultural community here in Cambridge?
Well, and I believe when you talk to people, they understand this, that arts is really at the basis of human growth. It's at the basis of innovation. I mean, it goes hand in hand with science, with imagination. And I would pull back to my professional career as an engineer, working with different departments and groups. And it's a skill that I've learned over time, and just being able to bring people together, set a game plan, listen to the experts in the room, set specific quantitative goals or qualitative goals, and move forward to meet those expectations. And, you know, I look forward to doing it. I mean, it's all important. So, thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you, Brian. I have been told that we're doing very well in terms of time. So if you in the audience have questions, our friend David here will collect your questions, and we'll be able to field some, or James. So David and James will be collecting the questions. I would like to invite Olivia DAgostino to the podium.
Hi, thank you. May I get some assistance, please, sir? Thank you very much. Thank you. Great. Hi, my name is Olivia DAgostino. I am extremely excited to be here tonight because in this whole field of 26 counselors, I'm the only one who's a professional artist and a nonprofit arts leader, and I'm extremely excited to share my ideas with my people. So to flesh out my background just a little bit, I got my BA in theater and dance from Amherst College, where I graduated summa cum laude and was also a 4-year varsity athlete. And then I earned my Master of Fine Arts in Acting from the partnership program between Brown University and Trinity Rep in Providence, Rhode Island. Here in Cambridge, I am in my 5th year teaching acting in the Department of Theater Arts at MIT, and I was the 6th candidate here tonight because I was teaching them today from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. I'm also the producing artistic director of Bridge Repertory Theater, which is a nonprofit that I started when I was 28 with $10,000, and 5 years later, our operating budget is over $100,000. We've served over 10,000 artists and audience members, and we are the first ever company in residence right here in the very beautiful Multicultural Arts Center. So that's enough about me. Let's talk about Cambridge, because really our city has the visibility, the responsibility, and the ability to be the ultra-progressive standard bearer of ultra-progressive governance on every front. But right now our arts policy is a little bit behind. To be specific, we allocate right now $1.1 million out of $605 million to all of the arts and culture, which also includes public celebrations. So that's less than 0.5%. And I think that this anemic funding is really symptomatic of the all too common misconception that the arts, at best, are a fringe component of society worthy of appreciation, and at worst are an egregious waste of time and money when we have so many other pressing needs. So here's the deal. As your arts counselor, the first thing I will do is create a tectonic shift in that perception. Okay? It is not arts as a waste of money. It is arts as an industry that in Cambridge alone generates $175 million in spending a year. It is not arts instead of something crucial like education. It's arts as part of making sure all of our children become creative innovators and thoughtful listeners. And it is not arts as part of something for the wealthy alone. It is arts as a human right to which all Cambridge residents have equal access. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you.
Erin's going to ask you a question.
Great.
So first, I want to thank you, Olivia. I've been the director of the Cambridge Art Association for 5 years. You're the first city council candidate who's ever reached out to me directly as part of your campaign, so I appreciate that, and I enjoy your fire. I'm not a Cambridge voter. I live in Somerville. We've heard a lot about funding for the Cambridge Arts Council and how they disperse funding. There are 67 arts and culture nonprofits in the city of Cambridge. beyond increasing funding for the Cambridge Arts Council, what other kinds of policy would you implement that would help to support those organizations?
Great. I have so many ideas. I'm just trying to pick which one to start with. We've talked about this a lot tonight, so I'll start with this. I'd like us to engage in a citywide branding exercise where we promote ourselves to ourselves as the city that puts the A in STEAM. That's actually why my logo is pixels becoming a brush stroke and in an O, which is of course my initial, but it's also this notion that STEAM is sort of a cyclical motion where the arts activate the STEM disciplines and the STEM disciplines activate the arts disciplines. Because I think that if we can really engage our arts sector and our tech sector into a really sort of strong synergistic relationship, we can get some of the money from the STEM corporations, which is a lot of money, and use it to bring it into the arts side. And then in exchange, I envision this program where arts workers actually go into the tech corporations and teach them soft skills like listening and creative thinking and collaboration. So if we can really get behind this STEAM thing, I think we can pull a lot of money and that will elevate all of our arts funding across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. I would like to invite Jeff Santos to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you. Olivia, you're a hard act to follow. Unlucky 7. Thank you for all for coming tonight. Shout out to Arts at CCTV, broadcasting again live, very important piece of how we communicate to the citizens of Cambridge. I'm a talk show host, candidate for city council, and it was really a proud moment back in 2008 when I had a chance to become the general manager of AM 1510, because it was the only, and this is the key word, independent progressive talk station in New England. Did it for 4 years. We took investors from outside of Massachusetts. After Barack Obama won second term, unfortunately they left, but it was basically folks who are hardworking in the world of labor who have continued to do my show. And the reason I bring this up is that because I know there are so many struggling people who are artists trying to make a living, and it's really, really difficult. I want to talk about how it relates to the average person. Tonight I'm wearing this U2 shirt, not because it's a fashion thing, but because of the fact that it's my favorite rock and roll band. And let me tell you just a couple of quick things about it. You know, they're a working class band from Dublin, right? In 1984, they had a hit song called Pride in the Name of Love. I don't know who knows the background of it, but it's a real tribute to Martin Luther King. And I remember being in college and talking to people who hated politics, didn't know much about the African American community. When they heard that song, all of a sudden they figured out MLK, civil rights. Now they connected the dots. Or when Dave Grohl interviewed a friend of mine, Steve Rosenthal, who owns a recording studio, and he was talking about small businesses and how in New York City the used record stores, the used bookstores are all gone, and now it's a playground for the wealthy. It wasn't Brian Williams or Chuck Todd. It was Dave Grohl, an artist, who raised the issue that our communities are being hollowed out. Or Michael Moore in his films. This is what we have to support, and I want to be your advocate. I want to support the arts, and I will use my show to bring people who are at this table and in the city council who are concerned about arts to keep that message going. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff. I think one of the things that makes the Cambridge cultural community so vibrant is there's some, world-class institutions in the city down to real community-based groups. And from someone who's come from a community-based institution, your radio show, which I'm sure, this scrape nickels together to keep going. Sure. Do you have strategies for the working artists or the small community groups and how we can support them as a city and how we can make sure that the fringe groups and the small nonprofits can really keep going and thrive?
Great question. Last night I was at a East Cambridge planning team, and we were talking with a potential or a developer who eventually will sell the place, and he was talking about the Innovation Center. And I mentioned as one of the questions I had, what about a jazz musician being part of the Innovation Center? What about using every agency we can to reach out to arts? I mean, we can't, as was said earlier, we can't put people in buckets. We need to be able to bring people together, and that's one of the reasons I want to use the show, is because, artists, I mean, if Dave Grohl can do what he did, if Chris Walla of Death Cab for Cutie can come on and talk about the political election as he did on my show back in 2012, and he relates that, I think that's what we have to do. We have to bring people together in that.
Thank you, Jeff. I'd like to invite Nadia Okamoto to the podium.
All right, so I also had some prepared remarks today, but I'm feeling inspired by this room, so I'm going to take a risk and put it down and speak from the heart and take the time to tell you why Cambridge and the arts matters to me. I was born in New York City, but I grew up with quite a bit of domestic violence and housing instability. But regardless of what my family was going through, Cambridge was a safe place my family would return to since my godparents have lived here my whole life. This was a safe place we would seek refuge, even in times when we didn't have a home or didn't have a safe home to go back to. Cambridge was a constant home for me, and that's why I'm running, to protect this concept of home for all residents, regardless of race, religion, socioeconomic status, where they're from, or how long they've been here. Along with Cambridge being a constant in my life, the arts have been a constant in my life. By the time I was 16, my family had moved 18 times, so we were moving around a lot. Going back and forth, coming back through Cambridge, almost in between most of our moves. I started dancing when I was 2. I grew up in the dance community, started at Mark Morris, then Alvin Ailey. I was doing pre-professional ballet by the time I was 12 on Point. I did the whole Royal Academy of Dance track, so I've followed your work and I'm a really big fan. And I started singing and doing piano. The point of my career was when I was 8 and played at Carnegie Hall. Arts have been a really strong part of my life. I'm from a family of artists. My mother is an aspiring writer. My dad was getting his MFA when I was born. And my family business growing up was an ice sculpting studio, which is why I actually have some scars on it was rough work growing up. To me, arts means healing and progress. Healing because arts was a constant in my life when everything felt kind of unstable. As a survivor of domestic abuse and sexual assault, when I left ballet because I hurt my body, I turned to hip hop, and I'm on the competitive hip hop team here at Harvard. I actually just came from 4 hours of dance practice because we have a sold out show on Saturday. Arts and hip hop was a way I reclaimed my sexuality and my womanhood, and it's played a big part for my family, for my mom to heal through writing, and for my sister, who's now a graphic designer, using art for Black Lives Matter and to fight racial discrimination. And she found this art when she was hospitalized for an eating disorder. So arts to me comes from a really, really special place. And it means progress, because we're able to take what we know from arts and use it for things we believe in. Right now I use arts. I'm the founding executive director of Period, which is the largest youth-run NGO in women's health, and we fight for equitable access to menstrual hygiene. When Trump was elected, when reproductive rights were being fought, my organization was a leading cause in working with photographers and artists and even painters who were using their menstrual blood to paint portraits of Trump. We did that. So to me, arts means healing. It means stability, and it means progress, and as a city councilor, I would fight for every child's access to have that outlet, because it is so important, regardless of socioeconomic status or where people from. So that's what it means to me. This is what the arts does to you. It's an outlet.
So I want to thank you for sharing with us, and I wish I had a tissue for you, but I don't.
Okay.
In Cambridge, we often see a disconnect between our academic institutions and our cultural institutions. In your unique position as a current student at Harvard, how would you work as a city councilor to connect the students in our academic institutions to the institutions that make up the cultural fabric of Cambridge?
So this is one of my primary goals, is to create more community-minded university relations, and one of the ways I think we can do that is by creating opportunities for young Cambridge youth to be taking advantage of the educational resources, the technological resources, the STEM programs, and the arts and culture programs. And I think that we're sort of getting started with it, right? We see that MIT is doing some work with community theaters and trying to bring arts into the community, but we could be doing so much more. And I think that I, as one of the candidates, has the fundamental and unique opportunity to be able to do that as a liaison between the institutions and the community here. I think it really does start with taking the arts opportunities, the performance opportunities, and opening them up to the public. Right now, Harvard and MIT do have some programs where they're taking arts and crafts into communities like Roxbury and Dorchester, but not into Cambridge, and I think that's something we can easily implement. So I think if anything from that, opening performances up to the public. And I think that's a very critical piece as well. And I'm excited to see what I can help do in bridging the institutions to the community through art, regardless of whether or not I'm elected. I think I'll have a better platform to do that if I'm elected, so I respectfully ask for your #1 vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Nadia. Thank you very much for your honesty. Our next candidate is Dan Lenke. Is Dan here? There's Dan. Come on up, please.
Once again, I'm so thrilled to be with the other candidates, none of whom I knew before, and each of whom, as we progress through this campaign, become more and more tutors to me and inspirations. And I see that Cambridge will be well served, whoever wins, because we're going to work together. So I had a few minutes with the arts myself. I was an actor from 14 to 16. My mom's was an actress. She studied Stanislavski in Moscow in 37. I decided not to continue, although I was having great fun, because no disrespect for actors, I loved it. I loved it all. But for myself, I felt I wanted to do something rather than to pretend something. So here I am, a few years later. It took me a few minutes to get ready. I was doing something maybe even more difficult than performing. So here, what we can do together. This is what I have to offer. We will only progress, all of us. Our only hope here in Cambridge, but it's a real hope and a realizable hope, is working together with the energies, the competencies, the guts, the intelligence that we can bring together, but we must. If we are disparate, if arts is not, for us it's everything. My wife's an artist, 46 years. I love her. I could boast about her the rest of the night. She's my heart. She's a writer and a storyteller and an artist in many ways. In fact, she worked here sometimes. She informs and encourages me. Our only way forward will be to bring the various communities, the housing community, the green community, transportation community, every aspect, every neighborhood and every aspect of our lives here, the universities. If we work together for the arts, well, two more words here. If we work together, we'll be able to do anything. If we don't work together, we won't be able to do anything. That's what I offer and what I intend. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. What role do you think the city council plays in doing that? I agree with you that for us to work together and break out of our silos is important, and to have our community work together. What role as a city councilor would you play to help facilitate that and make that happen?
We're all players here, okay? Really players. The city council among them. Firstly, who determines this, but maybe it can't be decided tonight, but is this space open for a council meeting? The council, it has to be open to not only in their, statements, but in their activities, open to, of course, artists, because in fact, we're not going to get anything done here correctly without the artists. We're going to lose it. Art, of course, is a fundamental element of honoring our lives to be human. Okay, specifically the council. We need to invite all of the artists to ask us, to tell us what needs to be done, and we need to come to you because you're busy. And I know artists are poor, okay? I was poor once myself. And lived with artists. I spent a minute in Susan Sontag's apartment when I was a kid, by luck. So the council has to come and visit you, has to be determined that our task here is to encourage you in every possible way, including financially. That wasn't specific enough, but more, we'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I'd like to invite Councilor Craig Kelly to the podium.
Thank you all for coming here. Last time I was here, I think, was for a middle school, elementary school art display. And to see what kids can turn into art and what hope that gives us for the future is an incredible thing. And I gotta say, Cambridge Public Schools does that as well or better than anyone. To say arts matters is sort of like saying we need air to breathe or that water is wet. It's just a simple fact of life. And in my family, my wife is on the board of the North Cambridge Family Opera, so once a year she's out there dressed as a tree or a garter or something. And my kids grew up through the arts. Robbie's at Middlebury now doing the Moth program, and every year at Middlebury is another year less of retirement. So my father's all excited that my son's going to be taking computer science, physics. I said, no, Dad, I'm telling him to take dance, because that is where we learn to be creative. And I'm going to expand the dialogue a bit from the arts. It's not just about the arts. It's about being creative. It's about looking at a problem and thinking of new ways to solve it. And we are besieged with problems. We are besieged with mundane problems, like how do we deal with the traffic that floods our streets and how people are going to get to work. We are besieged with important, really important problems, like how do we house people that need housing, or how do we deal with people with addiction and we don't seem to have the funding. And farther down the line, we are facing existential challenges in terms of climate change. We're not going to solve those by not being creative. We're going to solve those problems by being creative, and by being creative in creative ways. You know, I don't know if dance is going to solve climate change, but I know that the person who knows how to dance, the person that knows how to write, the person that knows how to paint, the person that maybe knows how to do all of those things, is going to be the person that figures out what the engineers need to do. Part of a team. That's why the A, to me, is the most important letter in STEAM. Now, you might not know it, but you are looking at someone who just recently was a 7th level dwarf fighter in Ravenloft. And on Sunday, I'll be spending the morning as a 1st level bard. I forget exactly where we'll be, but my favorite game is Dungeons and Dragons, and it has been forever and ever. And if there is one place where creativity shines, it is in the young mind. And if we are good, if we're good to ourselves and if we are good to each other, we will take that creativity, we'll bring it up in the young mind, and we'll keep it as we get older so that none of us are able to say, none of us feel comfortable saying, oh, I'm not an artist. Because we're all artists. We're all artists, and we have to embrace that and share it with each other. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Craig. And it's clear that art has been the arts have been a very important part of your life and your family life. We've had several written-in questions from the audience dealing with the role of gentrification and rising housing costs and how they impact the creative community in the city of Cambridge. What would your long-term policy be around keeping artists in Cambridge, whether that's through affordable studio space or affordable housing space?
I'll take the first one, which is the affordable studio space for $50. Thanks. So there are two ways, one of which we're currently working on, thanks to Richard Harding and company at the school committee, which is how do we make sure that those spaces in our schools, both the new ones that we've built for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and the older ones, are available to artists, not just performing artists, which is where we are now, but to artists in general at prices they can afford, because nothing shuts down a community theater more than having to pay market rate for someone's stage. So that's something the city and the school department can do, and we can expand it over within the bounds of what the schools have to do. The second one is we need to allow people to take their property in residential districts, say a garage, turn it into an art studio, and rent it out to people. Even though it's a commercial use in a residential district, we can do it with painting, we can do it with yoga, we can do it with bike repair, which is my personal favorite. But this new economy allows us to share space in a way that we have never been able to share space before. And that opportunity, go back to that creative stuff I was talking about earlier, that opportunity is going to allow some bright person to say, you know what, that dilapidated garage I have, for a few $1,000 I can fix it up, I can rent it to people by the hour, they get an artist space, I get a garage that isn't dilapidated, and best of all, perhaps that person will start to embrace his or her own artistic ability as well. So those are two things we can do, and we can do them now.
Thank you, Councilman. I'd like to invite our school committee person, Richard Harding, to the podium. Richard.
Thank you. And I echo Craig Kelly's commentary around the school department doing a great job around the arts. You know, for me, I think some of this is about who you are as a person and what kind of molded you around kind of the notion that we resource our values. And for me, understanding that we spend about $1.1 million, I think we could easily double that. But most importantly, I just want to tell you a little bit about who I am. So, you know, I was on the Community Arts Center board, and I grew up there taking photography as a young person. And for me, I kind of call myself kind of an artist, right? So, you know, the t-shirt line that I did, and I'm still doing, I won the Hometown USA Award, which you can see in CCTV for Rising to the Top. It was a documentary, it's in the hallway in CCTV. O.T. Mills and the Monday Morning Blues at the Newtown Court gym with Robert Bridgman and Vance Gilbert. And I've won, in my mind at least, 4 Grammy Awards for singing in the shower. But the truth is, I think that as you invest in the arts, you invest in people's creativity, as other people had said. And my daughter, who was an honor student at Ringen Latin, it was good to see while she was balancing her studies that ceramics was actually her outlet. And so for me, I think the investment in arts is totally important in a community such as ours, and we have an embarrassment of resources. So in Cambridge, I think we can do it. Just some things that I've done, because I think when you talk about being a city councilor, it's about what you have done or what you can do. And I'll just give you a few things that I've done personally and in my professional life. So one, obviously supporting the Arts Center and some money that Ken Reeves got for a van much before Aaron's time. The Kodai music program in the schools has expanded under my watch as a school committee member. We have an art teacher in every school, which didn't happen until last year. I'm the budget co-chair. These things don't happen by accident. That was my leadership that led us to be there. And we've strengthened the arts in the middle schools under the innovation agenda. These are facts. These are things that are done. These aren't things that are theoretical. These are things that are real. And you need a city councilor who can get things done. I mean, we resource our values, and that's what a city councilor has to do. He has to take the job, the profound responsibility that you give him or her to make things happen. I think that I consider artists a marginalized population. You know, they're another group that hasn't yet found a way, and they need to be incorporated in the conversation around affordable housing. I think that we are more progressive on paper in arts than we are in practice, and I would like to sort of stop that. You know, at the end of the day, I don't take a backseat to anybody on what I've done for arts in the city of Cambridge. And so arts matter. You elect Richard Harding to the city council, you'll see that we will change the rules of engagement around art and make it a priority in a different way than we have in the past. So, you know, for me, I think that my other proposal to have a 4 a.m. entertainment license in certain places, I think that helps artists. I think it helps the community move in a different direction. We're a world-class city and we need to act like it. Thank you.
Thanks, Richard, and congratulations on all the work in the Cambridge Public Schools. What, how did that happen? How did you do that, and kind of what were the strategies you used, and how would you use those strategies as a city council?
Yeah, it's funny. You know, people, you know, this isn't an easy job, right? Being an elected official, you are pulled from many different ways. You miss one thing in a time when you've done so much, people will indict you for that one thing. What I did was join with other people, quite frankly, who knew a little bit more about the arts than me, and understood that you have to make a connection to what you're doing. So for me, what I did was Kodai Music, for instance, is a direct connection to math. So I said, look, if we want our students to do better at math, which we saw the data showed that our students were not doing as well as they could, how do we make this connection in another non-traditional way? And I think that's the beauty of art, that it allows some different creativity and makes, you know, for a good space for connection. So we connected that to the arts. We understood that in the middle schools, the cohorts were very, very small, and in a new opportunity with the upper school model, we would have a place for bands and chorus because you had a cohort that could do this. So you have to think strategically about how you can use your perch. In my case, I'm a school committee member, to make sure that the arts are incorporated in a real way so that people can embrace them in a different aspect. And you know, this is how it works. If homelessness and housing and all these other big priorities are there, the arts will naturally fall unless you have someone who pays a particular attention to them. So for me, it was using cross-cutting strategies and collaborating in the way that I knew how from my perch as a school committee member with like-minded people to make the arts an important piece of what we did in Cambridge. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, I would like to invite Andrew Smith. He's going to speak on behalf of Councilor Dennis Carlone.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Andrew Smith. I'm here on behalf of Councilor Dennis Carlone, who's running for re-election to your city council, and he needs your #1 vote on November 7th. I want to thank Mass Creative and the Multicultural Arts Center for hosting us. I want to thank the crew for providing the best lit forum we've had all year, and I want to thank the crew from CCTV for their work behind the scenes. So Dennis Carlone is an architect and an urban designer, which means he is an artist in his own right. He has been a consultant to the city of Cambridge for 30 years before being the city councilor. He was a consultant to the Arts Council. He specifically worked on the musical fence, which was designed by Paul Matisse, that's Henri's grandson. They used to have that at City Hall before it became too noisy for the neighbors. One of Dennis's accomplishments is the citywide master plan that he fought for and is now working to implement. One of the things he's focused on is implementing public art in that plan, because great cities have public art and art spaces as focal points. It brings people together, it brings communities together, it makes cities a place people want to be. We live in a city and not a market. You want it to feel like it. The other thing is that the arts mean jobs. One of the things Dennis worked on with the Volpe development was getting job training from MIT for the people in Kendall. The arts bring jobs not just for people who make art, but they bring jobs for people behind the scenes. They encourage kids in school to broach or to explore a new career. whether that's a union job with IATSE or a job in actors' equity, being a creative person on stage. All of that contributes to people's lives and to the livelihood of the city. Last night, we had a house party for Dennis and his campaign, and one of the people in attendance is an artist and said that they're worried that they might be the last generation of artists who are able to live in this city because it's too expensive. Their kids won't be able to live here. The artists are going to go to Somerville or where they can afford it. So that means that artist housing has to be a component of our affordable housing efforts. Old mill buildings are great places to turn into studios, to turn into housing, zone them so that people can work and live there. That can be part of the master plan. That can be part of making the city itself a work of art. So please give Dennis your #1 vote on November 7th, and thank you very much for your time.
Oh, you still get a follow-up question.
Oh, okay, great.
So we've heard a lot about the Percent for Art program tonight, first with Mags discussing the cap. If Dennis is interested in including the Percent for Art program and more public art in that city plan, what kind of policies will be put in place to increase the funding for the Percent for Art program?
Well, we have a rainy day fund that's got $220 million in the bank. We're the wealthiest city in the state. Let's put some of that excess money we have towards the arts. We have major technology corporations in this city. The city needs to do more to have them become patrons for the arts. Not just to put your logo in a program, but to give your employees a reason to stay here at night, a reason to put down roots in the city because there's something they value. I don't know the exact mechanism, but I will let Dennis do the planning on that one. It's a way to bridge the corporate, the creative, and the civic community using whatever powers the city has, or the city council has in its control.
Thank you very much. So we have some time left. So I just want to share my thoughts with you on a couple of events that we just held in Harvard Square. One in October, the Oktoberfest, where we were able to, and have for the past 11 years, coordinate our efforts with HONK. And, you know, it's kind of funny because back in 2006, when folks from the Second Line Social Aid and Pleasure Society Brass Band came to the Harvard Square Business Association and talked about this idea of HONK, sometimes it was hard to wrap your head around what that means exactly. And they said, well, you know, we're an activist band, and we want to bring back the streets for horns, bikes, and feet. That sounded like a pretty good idea. So, you know, the very first year in 2006, when the HONK folks joined Oktoberfest, they came over to Harvard Square with their tubas on a tee and played in Harvard Square, and it was just wonderful. So the second year they called and said, you know, we'd like to do that again, and this year, by the way, there are 9 bands, and we think that we would like to have a procession from Davis Square to Harvard Square. So, you know, I called Rich Rossi and I said, you know, I'm not really sure how to do this, but we're thinking we'd like to take one lane of traffic along Mass Avenue from Beach Street to Harvard Square for a procession for the HONK bands. And Rich said, sure, no problem, and, you know, gave us a permit to do that. And the very next day, I got a call from the police commissioner and said, you need to come here and speak to us. And I thought, oh dear, I'm in big trouble. So went to the police department, and they said, so that was terrific, except if you're going to do it next year, you need to have a parade permit. So the third year, the honkers called and said, you know, we have 15 bands, and they're coming in from all over the country. And I thought, well, this is great. We're going to have a real parade, and we're going to get a real parade permit. So, you know, here we are this past October. It was our 11th year, and I think the year that we had the most bands was probably 35 bands, which was really amazing, but probably a little bit too much. Because what folks don't realize is that people in North Cambridge and around the Davis Square area actually house the the musicians that come in from not only across the country, but across the globe, because this movement that started right in North Cambridge and in Davis Square grew to be a global phenomenon. So this past year, we had, I think, 27 bands, and it's really, it's an amazing event in that it brings in activist groups, artist groups from across the region, and of course bands from across the world, to a 6-hour celebration. And it really is one of the most zany and outrageous and fun and magical spectacles that I've ever participated in. And it's all good, right? It's all good, and we hope that we can continue to do it for a very long time. And I really want to thank, the folks from the Second Line Social Aid and Pleasure Society Brass Band. I think Ken Fields is here tonight, and he's one of them. And it's just been a wonderful experience. And, the month before, we worked with Revels on River Sing. And, if you haven't been to River Sing, then you really need to try that. It's a magical event that celebrates the equinox, the autumn equinox. And, for a long time, Revels held the event on the river, and they did it exactly at the right time, right? So if it was, if the change of season was at 6:21 on a Tuesday evening, then that's when they celebrated. And I remember speaking to them maybe 10 years ago and said, why don't you try doing it on a Sunday afternoon, closest to the equinox, because then our families can participate. And, Memorial Drive is closed, and why don't we meet in Harvard Square and have a parade down to the river where we can all participate. And that event has grown, and my only regret about that event is that it's so magical and so wonderful, and not enough people participate. So I really hope that as we go forward, we're really trying very hard with Rebels to make sure that lots of people come and celebrate this amazing event where we say goodbye to summer and we welcome the fall, and we do it as the sun is going down over the river, and it's incredibly magical. So those are just a couple of events that I participated in the last couple of months that I'm so proud of, and really so honored to be helping to present them to the community, but working with the community to bring them to all of you. We have another event coming up that we're working with Jose on the first Saturday in November, and it's with Isabella Lande. And the Coop called us and said they were looking for space, and they needed large space on a Saturday night, and they wanted to do it someplace in Harvard Square. And I immediately thought of Jose and the Sanctuary Theater. And so we're bringing Isabella Lande with the Coop, and Jose is going to be there, and Orinoco, which is a Venezuelan restaurant in Harvard Square, is going to be providing some appetizers and El Jefes, and we're working with Longy to have beautiful Latin music, and it's just going to be a wonderful evening of celebration of all things that are wonderful in Latin America. And the reason I'm telling you this is because the resources here in our community are amazing, and all we have to do is sort of bring them together, and we make beautiful magic. And I hope that going forward we will consider giving Jason a whole lot more money and all of our arts groups, so that when we have events like River Sing and the Honk Festival and Isabella Lande, that more people can come and participate. So having said that, there's one question that came from the audience that our judges here, Aaron and Matt, really liked. So what we're going to do is, because we have time, we're going to ask one question to all of you and ask you to come up in the same order that, maybe we'll do it reverse order. How's that? Oh, and somebody just came in. Who just came in? So we have one more candidate. How about that? So we're going to ask, and I please work with me on this. If I pronounce your name incorrectly, I want to say it's Batsade Sibonsai. Yes, and you should come to the podium, and you'll get your 3 minutes, and then we'll ask you a really tough question. And welcome. We're delighted that you're here.
Thank you. I'm sorry for being a little late. I had a family event today that I tried to get out of, but when you have a 2.5-year-old, he asks a lot of questions. So I'm Batsuri Sivansai. I am running for Cambridge City Council for the very first time. I came over to the United States as a refugee immigrant when I was 4.5 years old. I had a really great opportunity to live in a immigrant community where there were 2-3 generations back of the same families. So the same families that my parents lived with in their first village that got burnt down because of the Vietnam War. But what that gave me an opportunity to see is a world where arts can really help people heal and people understand what their past history is, and to also express it in a way that can preserve our history and to share it with other communities. I remember that hanging out with my father when he, after 12-hour shifts of working, he would show me math, and he would use art to show me how to think about math. And one of the drawings that he and I did together often was drawing birds, because he showed me how a triangle with a little bit of a oval diamond can create a bird's wings. And from there, he would help me create like the beak. And he used art to really help teach me, because he didn't know English. And so that really gave me an opportunity to see not only what nature can provide us, but also a different type of language that folks can learn from. And I think that, well, my father was also a math teacher, and he also taught dance in Laos. He was a principal. But when he came over, he was a janitor and then a factory worker. So I knew that there would be economic challenges, but art and my family's use of art helped me provide opportunities for me to become an attorney and open up a law firm to help other immigrants' families and small businesses. Then I went on to be director of public policy, working in education, fighting for arts programs in Boston. Also looking at affordable housing and economic development, where we looked at murals, where murals can reflect the community and preserve the community, just as my parents taught me. I want to bring that type of diverse leadership and perspective and professional experience to Cambridge, because I believe that Cambridge can lead in providing art programs and community art to our people, just not for young folks, but to adults as well. So I hope that you would come and talk to me about some of the concerns you have or thoughts and ideas, and thank you so much for listening to me, and I hope that you will give me your #1 vote.
Congratulations on all your work. If you become a city councilor, what would be the first thing that you would do, and the kind of the most important thing you would do to help support the arts and cultural community here in Cambridge?
I am really big in community engagement, because I think that one person can't see all of the challenges that our communities have. I really would like to sit down with a lot of the arts community here. So a little bit about my background, other than my father, is that I wasn't the best dancer growing up, and so I didn't get to participate a lot in a lot of the competitions, but I had a lot of friends, and some of them are here in Cambridge, and they do a lot of the dances and the African dances. So I see it through their lens, but I think that for me, I need to see better. And I would want to look at how we can provide affordable spaces, given that we are looking at development, and also whether it's for housing or just a creative art space.
Thank you. So at this point, what we're going to do is we have a question here, and we'll just open it up. So whoever wants to just come to the podium and answer, please feel free to do that. So what role can the City Council play in ensuring that low-income children interact with the arts from preschool through high school? and you get 1 minute to answer that question. So again, the question is, what role can City Council play in ensuring that low-income children interact with the arts from preschool through high school? Who wants to take that one? Please, Andrew.
Again, my name's Andrew. I'm here for Councilor Carlone. Dennis mentored school children every summer for 18 years and saw them grow up. Dennis believes that Cambridge absolutely needs to provide universal preschool for all its 4-year-olds because the city controls that through the Human Development Department. Combine the two efforts. Find mentors in the arts community for young children to work with them outside of school hours, after school and during the summer, and find people at the universities in the arts programs to mentor them through the course of their lives, through the course of their arts education, expose them to culture, expose them to something they may or may not get at home, open up the possibilities to them. That takes people being dedicated, but we have those people here, and the city has the funding and can implement the policy to do it.
Thank you. Councilor Devereaux.
Hi, I'm just going to mention one initiative that I was involved with a couple of years ago when I worked at a school that predominantly served low-income students, and that was to form a partnership with Maud Morgan Arts for a February vacation arts program where these students would be able to participate in the February break arts program that Maud Morgan Center offers, but at a reduced price. And I think it's really important. There are, there's lots of downtime, even though our public schools have art classes and all of that. During vacations and summer vacations, the low-income children don't have the same opportunities as kids from families of means, so they don't get those programs. So I think we could create more scholarship opportunities and partnerships. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff.
That's a continuation of what I said earlier, but the fact is that when Harvard and MIT have major artists come to the event, come to their university, Cambridge City Schools should try to figure out a way to partner with them. I mean, Wynton Marsalis came to Harvard about a year ago. It was an amazing performance. I could tell you that there would be people waiting to line up to be able to sort of do that. And the city has to work with the private universities, as someone said, the local college, Harvard, at MIT, same way. I think you have to be able to utilize and be able to sort of pressure these major institutions who have tremendous wealth and so forth to be able to reach out. And I can tell you that after talking to Wynton Marsalis after the fact, we're trying to set up an interview, he would have loved to have met these kids. Just a thought.
Thank you. Nadia.
Building off what Jeff said, I think that there's a tremendous opportunity to put arts and culture right in front of young students, especially from the younger age. I think maybe I'm a little bit biased, but dance is a perfect way to teach hand-eye coordination to very, very young children. And it's a way to teach how to express oneself in more forms than just words. I think at the same time, this is also a tremendous opportunity to provide leadership opportunities for older students as well. And I know this from personal experience. When my family hit harder financial times and I wasn't able to afford ballet anymore, my first job was teaching dance at low-income after-school programs and making up choreography and teaching them to students who came from more disadvantaged backgrounds. And then I started my high school's dance and cheer team and led that whole thing. And so I think that there's a tremendous opportunity in seeing those programs grow and studying how those programs continue to exist, even here at CRLS too, how older students might be able to actually take what they know, continue exposing themselves to art through opportunities funded and provided by the city, but also take what they know and teach them to younger students as well, whether that be through creating art workshops for younger students or creating dance workshops as well.
Thank you very much. Brian.
Well,
Brian Sutton. So I want to pull on my own personal experience. So I didn't grow up in Cambridge. Right? I grew up in upstate New York in a very small, very poor town. And the only, I mean, it was a town where there was literally nothing to do in the middle of the woods in upstate New York. And the best thing that they had were the after-school programs. Most of mine were math or science involved, future problem solving. But I was in band. But those are the type of programs that really helped me grow a lot more outside of school, and you know, it did probably kept me out of trouble a little bit also. But that's the direction I would go pulling from my experience. Thank you.
Quintin.
So I came to Cambridge to study at MIT as a graduate student, and during that time I volunteered for an after-school program in Dorchester working with at-risk kids. And one of the things that we did was they had to do they had to learn a musical instrument as part of that program. So, you know, echoing what Brian said, I think the after-school programs are a really great opportunity to expose kids to arts. And then also partnering with our local nonprofits, as I mentioned earlier. Green Cambridge has just started a new program to reach out and educate kids about nature using art. And there's many more opportunities like that with a diverse group of nonprofits in our city to extend out their programming as well to low-income communities throughout the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Olivia.
Hi, so it's incredibly crucial that little kids have repeated exposure to art, because if they don't, there's a returning sort of diminishing effect where if they haven't exposed themselves to arts enough early in their life, they have a big barrier to wanting to be arts patrons later in life. So I think we should really look at parks, okay? Little kids spend a lot of time in parks, and parks are completely democratic and available to every family. At the DeCordova Museum, not far from here, they actually had a preschool. They might still have it, and the kids would like climb on these incredible sculptures that professional artists created for their preschool. There's no reason why our parks have to have sort of mass-produced equipment in them. They could have sculptures that are created by local artists that are covered in poetry, and there could be a thing where they play music instead of it being, you know, monkey bars, right? We could actually activate our arts, our public parks into really cool interactive art spaces for our littlest ones to interact with in a completely free and democratic way. Thank you.
Dan.
This is my favorite kitchen table since I was 6 with my own parents and 12 brothers and sisters. So I recognize, and who wouldn't, everyone here does, that every one of these proposals and observations are doable and necessary. So what do? We assign a counselor, or what he assigns himself, and is chosen to implement, or maybe a committee, to see that every single one of these ideas, which are all great, well thought out, and will themselves surely benefit the children, the preschool, the community, the elders, and even if some of us here have been teachers, there's nothing more educational than teaching anyone. So, and you can bring that forward. We can bring it to each other. So I'm suggesting that we list everything here, all excellent ideas, and we do them all. We just make that our commitment in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Craig, please.
I'm going to boomerang that question and say you're asking the wrong people. The city council is not going to have that answer. Those creative minds I was talking about earlier, those people out here in the audience and elsewhere, that's where the answer lies. The city has the funding. The city can say, yes, here's space, here's a contract, here's a way we can help you. But God help us if we're looking for the city to solve this problem, because we have not been able to solve it for decades. And that wonderful public school arts program I talked about earlier, it looks like it looks in Belmont. I mean, it's great for my kids, but we haven't figured out how to crack that nut yet. So those people who have new, innovative ideas that say, you know, this is how we can make it work, this is how we can make the arts programs represent our city, come with those ideas, and we can help there. But please, don't look at the creative city minds and the city council minds to come up with that solution. The solution, the wisdom is in the room. We just need to find that and bring it to City Hall. Thank you.
We have Craig, and then we're going to have Richard.
The arts in the city of Cambridge is big, and the arts do matter. Art is strong in the city of Cambridge. It's strong community. Children and mothers come first, and they want to teach their children art. So we need, and this is the wealthiest community in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we have so much money in our savings account. Why don't we just bring everybody together and come up with a solution and vote on it? So Greg Morey does support the arts very much. This is Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's a world-class city, and we should treat the arts in a world-class way. So Greg Morey supports the arts very much. Look at this building. This building's beautiful. This is a beautiful building. I love this building. We should come here more often. So I would vote on that too. Once a month, all the city councils come here and figure out ways that we can fund the art. That makes sense. Does that make sense? That makes sense. I support the arts. Thank you. Greg Morey.
I think that, and I appreciate Craig's perspective on this, I think that what you have to do is do what works in this circumstance. Craig came a couple weeks ago and said how segregated the arts were at the high school. We have an extremely professionally run program where the kids, like his son, are excelling, but it's segregated. It's a dirty little secret in Cambridge that you have a segregated system in the city around some of the things in the schools, and we need to fix that. So what I would do is I think about the people who are doing it. The Community Arts Center, one of the most diverse places in the city, one of my favorite places, so I'm biased, but all low-income kids from the housing projects like me who are enjoying the arts and excelling in the arts. You have Divas on the Runway, which is another thing at the high school which looks at using the arts to talk about domestic violence through their fashion show. And then lastly, you have some public celebrations. We didn't talk about that, but look, you have the Jazz Festival that we have, and I would, quite frankly, think about the Caribbean Carnival, obviously, but having more public celebrations throughout the summer months. Why are we having a dance party one time when it's probably the most popular thing in the city? We need to have it more than once. I know it costs money, but we are the richest city in the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. So as a little surprise, because you've all been so wonderful, we're going to invite our friend Stan Strickland up here to entertain us just a little bit.
Thank you. I feel inclined to say something, but you've said so many wonderful things. I would like to share that prior to being here, I was meeting with some business people in Beverly where I work with emotionally disturbed children at the Cummings Center to discuss with them the importance of art in the healing of traumatized youth. And my observation is trauma is pervasive among all of us, and that anxiety and trauma is a growing phenomenon in the general public. And it seems that art is something that bypasses that part of our brains where you cannot articulate what the problem is. So sometimes psychotherapy won't do it. You need another direct link. So I think art matters because it matters to you. It's you. So the most important people to me right now are you, because you're the people I'm with. So your well-being, your healing, how art matters to you is what's most important to me at this moment. Because as you embrace that, you will have more capacity to effervesce that feeling of what art is essentially.
behalf of Matt Wilson and Erin Becker and our friends here at the Multicultural Arts Center, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Jason, thank you for being here. Henrietta Davis, thank you for being here, and all of you. And this was really fun. We should do it again in a couple of years. Have a good evening.
Yeah.